Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Caroline Joyce, the Executive Director of Parents Against Vaping. I am joined by our co-founder, Meredith Berkman, and we're so delighted to have all of you here. Thank you again for taking the time out of your schedule to join us. We felt like it was just incredibly important to get everybody together to have a conversation, parent to parent, in terms of what's been happening as of late, because there's been a lot of activity lately, a lot of actions that have brought us to this point, and the reason why we wanted to gather with you this evening, which we will definitely get in and get into and share a little bit more with you. But just in terms of moving along, before we do this, I want to just give a couple of quick housekeeping items. Just remember that if you have a question, we would love to hear questions. We want this to be really interactive. So please put your questions in the Q&A, and we will work to answer them either live, or we'll make sure that we get you a response as best we can. And then we're going to be, after this is over, we'll send the recording out. So if you're not able to join this live, or if you need to leave early, we understand in terms of being busy parents. Please go ahead and just know that you will receive the recording. So with that, I just want to get in and to do an introduction. Again, I'm joined by Meredith Berkman, who is the co-founder of Parents Against Vaping. I just want to talk a little bit about in terms of what's happened and why we're here today. So just the timeline, in case you haven't seen or heard, there's been some really significant actions that have come out through the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. The FDA, as you might know, has the regulatory authority on tobacco products, meaning that they make sure that in terms of the industry and market, their products come to the market, that they are reviewed, that they are authorized, that they're able to be on the market legally. And then FDA does this through a standard of public health, keeping the public health interest in mind. And that, of course, includes in terms of children. So what's happened that's really significant is that on May 5th, just a couple of weeks ago, the FDA authorized, again, it's not approved, they authorized the glass vapor products. And this included, for the first time ever, two fruit flavors, which included mango and blueberry. So this, again, it can't be repeated enough in terms of this is historic and also a reversal and contradicts what FDA knows to be true, is that flavors help kids. They play an incredible and dangerous role in initiation, and they also help keep kids coming back for more. So we, amongst other public health groups and advocates, were just floored when we saw this and incredibly concerned. And then what happened on May 9th is that FDA issued a guidance on e-cigarettes that said that they were going to allow unauthorized products to remain on the market. And as long as the companies have an application, as long as they submitted their paperwork, even if the products haven't been authorized, they're going to let them remain on the market. So this was just really stunning in terms of this happening, because in terms of what this means is that products that we have been concerned about for so long, products that do not have the authorization on there, are going to remain on the marketplace. And then what's happened since then is there's been just some incredible response that's happened from decision makers that we'll get into with you tonight and unpack a little bit more. Like on May 11th, the attorneys general led a coalition urging the FDA to reverse this guidance, just in terms of this is not lawful. This is incredibly concerning. This is harmful and dangerous in terms of to allow this to take place. Yeah, and so we also, as we work on this and we bring this forward tonight, just as a reminder, we're a nonpartisan organization, so we aren't worried about getting into any of the politics of anything. Our charge and our mission is to protect kids and support families, and so that crosses all barriers and parties for us. So just wanted to let you know. But also, I'm happy to say that the May 11th letter that came out from the AGs was bipartisan, which is just incredible. 21 AGs, in fact, actually signed this letter, and they did so quickly, so nimbly, and just really just importantly to get this out. So that's just what we wanted to do, is just in terms of just a level set in terms of what's happened as of late in terms of the significance. And of course, if you have questions on this or it just seems really clear as mud, please don't be shy about bringing that up. And just so you know, Glass Vapor is the name of a company. So Glass is a product that we haven't even seen yet in terms of physically. We've only seen images of it on the Glass website. Everyone is trying to see what this product looks like, what it can do, what does it mean. But we're concerned because, of course, it's flavored. If you go to the Glass website right now, it says their products are sold out. So we're just concerned, but we suspect that this is not a small company, that this is not a mom and pop shop that created these e-cigarettes. One other thing to mention about the Glass Vapor products is that they claim to have a technology that will help age gate their products, that youth will not be able to use the products because of these youth age gating technology, which we are incredibly hesitant and skeptical. I mean, if anybody has ever met a teenager nowadays, they know that they are just masters at cracking the code on all things technology. And also, it's just the FDA itself has acknowledged that, they're concerned about age gating technology as not as robust and rigorous as it needs to be. So this is, again, just adds to and compounds the concern that we have. So I'm going to move on, but thank you so much for the questions on that. And just a little bit more, and then I want to get into the discussion with Meredith here. But these are the 21 attorneys general that wrote the FDA, which is just really phenomenal. And Meredith and I were fortunate enough to actually be at a press conference when the lead AG, AG Tong from Connecticut, and along with Senator Blumenthal, also from Connecticut, spoke out and spoke up about their concerns and the urgency around this issue. And it was just, we were really just honored and humbled that they included the parent voice at this event. They also had a young activist there from University of Connecticut. And then they had one of our colleagues from the American Lung Association also there. So it's just really terrific that they had sort of the understanding in terms of how powerful and influential our voice can be and how much we're needed at the table. So what I want to do is just, talk a little bit more about our organization, about what we're doing and how we're responding to these developments, how we want to meet this moment. So I'm going to ask Meredith to unmute yourself in terms of and get Meredith involved and get our conversation going here. One thing I want to share with the audience tonight is that
Meredith has never muted herself for this long ever in a Parents Against Vaping webinar. But anyway.
Meredith is not a wallflower. For those of you who have been fortunate to meet her, and I'll just say, like, in terms of speaking of meeting Meredith, I was saying like our meet cute was actually previously to being the executive director of Parents Against Vaping. I had worked on this tobacco control issue for 25 plus years in a professional capacity. I mean, I always say like many of you, I grew up with a parent that smoked heavily. So I worked on this issue my whole entire life. But professionally, when I worked for an organization based in Washington, D.C., I got to meet Meredith and the PAVE team and the organization and the halls of Congress. Meredith and I worked together in terms of like, look, let's lock arms. Let's get really strategic about how we can make this event so powerful. And then I got to witness firsthand in terms of Meredith and Dorian Furman and other parents that were at the table speaking and testifying to Congress in terms of the dangers of this product, but also because in terms of they're bringing the parent voice. So that was back in 2019. The
That's
organization
right. We met in
started
2019, right?
2018. Yeah. So Meredith, would you mind, for our audience tonight, for those that aren't aware of how PAVE, Parents Against Vaping, got its start, would you mind sharing the history of how we got to be here today?
No, but first of all, I mean, thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you to our team. We have the Wizard of Oz. You can't see him. We have our teammate Austin, and running this for us, and we have Carolyn and Carolyn. Yes, we did meet. We met cute in the halls of Congress, and we're enormously grateful now to have you running this organization that started as, and here's the origin story. But go Knicks! Can't help myself because I'm a basketball fan. For those of you who can see, but. In April of 2018, my then 16-year-old son, my one son, the second of my four kids, came home from school and said to me and my husband, "Mom, Dad, I have to tell you about something that happened at school today." And I not only had I never heard that before, but I haven't heard it since. So we were all ears. And my son Caleb proceeded to tell us that there had been what he described as a mixed message anti-addiction talk at school. And this was, as I said, April of 2018. And he then told us that there was someone talking to an assembly of ninth graders. This was a new high school for him about Juul. I did not know what Juul was at that time, and most parents did not. But every kid in that room was either addicted to Juul, had friends who were, or was casually using Juul. They all knew what Juul was. And this supposed educator was left alone without other adults present, presumably so that the kids would speak freely, and to talk about Juul. And my son described that he repeatedly said to this room of teenagers, Juul is for adults, not for kids, but it is, quote, totally safe. It's for adults, not for kids, but it's 99.9% safer than combustible cigarettes. And it's for adults, not for kids, but it will get FDA approval rather than authorization, the correct term, any day. And I was so shocked when my son explained this to me. I called the only other two moms that I knew, Dorian Furman, whom you already mentioned, and our third co-founder, Dina Alessi, and we were very quickly joined by Mimi Boblik, who's our part, of course, our co-founder now to this day. And I called these two moms and said, "Have you heard this from your kids?" And they said, "Well, we'll have to go ask." And to make a very long story short, which I'm not good at, which is why was muted for a long time, we discovered within 24 hours that this was in fact a Juul representative, which we then understood what Juul was. We looked it up, who had come into the school without the school's knowledge through an outside anti-addiction group. And essentially, in the days and weeks that followed, as we began Googling and researching, we understood that Juul was a predatory tobacco company, essentially, that had created this stealth by design device using flavors, marketing directly to kids on social media platforms where kids were, adults were not. And in the end, I think it was not until 9 or 10 months later, after we had gone to the Food and Drug Administration, to FDA, after they received hundreds and hundreds of letters from parents because we created a website and were flooded with emails. I used to watch them like late at night from people who were like, "Oh my God, what is this thing my kid's addicted to? My kid is so, what do I do?" But we eventually went to FDA to say this company came into our school. We started connecting with people, and in the summer of 2019, we shared our story publicly for the first time, along with others in a congressional committee, where we exposed Juul, as did others, for the predatory company that it was. And it was really 9 months after the episode I described, where Juul was referred to, where the juuling had become a verb, and the idea was that this was an epidemic. And at the highest point, the figures showed there were millions of kids who were juuling. And the problem is that Juul opened this Pandora's box of vaping. Juul was later, we talked at the beginning about there were vaping companies and then there were tobacco companies. But over these years, what we had discovered as we did more research and connected with others and have created essentially a grassroots movement, and the first grassroots movement of an organized parents voice fighting the predatory behavior of the tobacco industry. What we discovered was that this was not big tobacco 2.0. This was big tobacco seeking to addict a new generation so that they could create lifetime customers whom they would then, in the end, kill because of their poisonous products. That's
Yeah,
the
and Philip
short
Morris had
version.
purchased Juul. Like Philip Morris acquired Juul, which was just, I remember that moment. And it was just really just, okay, here we go in terms of just what that means in terms of for this movement and what it means in terms of for industry involvement. So Meredith, like that was back in 2018. Here we are in 2026, eight years later. And
Right.
so here we are again in terms
Right.
of like,
So
yeah.
this is why I feel like the first moment, started by three moms and then spread out into, what was a grassroots movement is now a national organization that does both advocacy and education at the federal, national, and at the city, state, and local levels. There are millions of American families whose lives were upended by and remain deeply impacted by Juul and the companies that followed. I think that we are at a second inflection point. Our goal was to sound the alarm about this, enormous public health crisis impacting American families, children, and parents. I think now,
And a public health crisis that was created by an industry that is profiting in terms of from these addictions.
right.
So, right, we're seeing this again. We're seeing it play out again. We see it's been playing out for decades, if not, now more than a century almost, in terms of
Right.
how the
Well,
industry.
I'm older than Carolyn, a lot older, but when I grew up, and for many of you, I'm sure a lot younger than I am, but even then, when I was a teenager, we already knew that smoking caused cancer, smoking was bad, and it was like the quote, bad kids in my school. It was in the back parking lot, right? So we knew that smoking was bad. And in fact, before all of this happened in 2018, the youth smoking rates were the lowest they had been for decades, right? The public health organizations and elected officials had fought so hard and so successfully to beat back the monster, the gangsters of the tobacco industry. And then there it was again. And so we're really proud that our sounding the alarm and our partnering with parents around the country, with public health groups and researchers and pediatricians, et cetera, so many groups, we were able to cut the numbers, but still to this day, with outdated figures, but the most recent, there are almost 1.5 million young people, middle and high schoolers, who are using flavored vapes, flavored tobacco products, many of those on a daily basis. This is not a problem that has gone away. And so we've had great success. And now in this moment, and I can see from the chat, a lot of people are horrified and concerned. What is this about money and influence? And so, again, Carolyn so perfectly said, like, this is public health is not and should never be a political or partisan issue. And we certainly we're not partisan. Like, we don't care. As long as you are someone who cares about protecting kids from the dangers of the predatory tobacco industry and the harms caused by these flavored, addictive nicotine tobacco products, that's all we care about. There has been a lot of reporting, and based on the timeline that Carolyn gave you, that the tobacco industry and companies and industry wide has essentially, because of enormous donations, has
Mhm.
co-opted the federal government, has co-opted FDA through the executive branch. So this is not a political statement. It is widely reported. You can read all about, I mean, as recently as today, more and more stories have come out, about donations that were made at the federal level, donations that were made to PACs controlled by the current administration. Again, this is not about one administration or another. It's about this administration in this moment. It has nothing to do with politics. But there is so much reporting about money and influence. This is something that the industry has done, as Caroline said, for decades. And so we are at this inflection point, this catalytic moment where the industry has co-opted the federal government. And if you have interest, when we send out, next week, we'll talk about things that you as parents can do. We can send some of the articles that I think people are interested in or have read about or have heard about. But the federal government, because the industry has used its uh, enormous enormous resources, enormous billions of dollars made off the backs of vulnerable people and vulnerable children. They have been able to buy influence and power, and so it's a catalytic moment where where FDA has failed us. Has failed American families. It has
Yeah.
failed to live up to its regulatory, legal mission to
Yeah.
act to protect the public health of our country and certainly of our children. And so the question is now, what can we do? And
Mm.
the answer is both the same as before, but also different in that it's more important than ever. What we learned was that there is no amount of money from the beginning in 2018 till today, there is no amount of money that the tobacco industry could ever spend that could overpower or drown out the authentic, powerful voice of a parent who is fighting to protect their kids. Like, parents have no financial responsibility to the industry. Certainly I am a volunteer, our parents are volunteers, our leadership is motivated by the authentic, honest voices of parents whose only benefit to being in this fight is to protect their kids. So we can stand up in any state house, in the White House, which we've done, and say the people that you are hearing from are making money on what they tell you, these products that they want authorization for. Parents just want their kids to live healthy lives. So now is the time for us to raise our voices. And I'm going to mute myself again and let Caroline tell you exactly what that means.
No, no. I mean, this has just been amazing, Meredith. Thank you so much for all this background. So I want to talk a little bit about how we've responded as an organization. And we're so proud and pleased to share that we've had parents that have responded in terms of we've sent out a communication saying, please lend your voice, please let the FDA know in terms of how you disagree with this decision, how concerned you are, and how you want them to you're calling for a reversal of this decision, that there's really just no other pathway forward in terms of what we know right now. And
And
we
just to
know
be
what,
clear, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't
no,
help myself. It's really sort of there are two things going on at the same time. The AG letter that you referenced, the bipartisan AG letter, is in response to what is called an FDA guidance saying we're going to allow products that have like checked the box and saying, oh, we're going to try to get authorization for these products just to stay on the market even though they haven't been authorized. We're not going to enforce it. We're going to just let them hang out there and sell their products. And we're also talking about the first time that FDA has given authorization to flavored products, to mango and blueberry products. And why does that matter? Because FDA itself, both its leadership publicly in Congress and many other times, and even in its own earlier guidances just a couple of months ago, FDA has admitted and said repeatedly, even today, as late as today, that flavors are the primary driver of youth use of tobacco and nicotine products.
yeah,
So FDA has repeatedly said flavors are the reason kids are using these products. And now they've authorized flavors and they're not going to enforce. They're going to let those products hang out until whenever they make their decision, which has been years to begin with. Sorry, Carolyn, I'll
yeah.
let you keep going, but it's a
No, no,
two-pronged, we're asking, the letter is about a two-pronged
yes,
um,
yes.
call for reversal.
Yes, no. And look, so these flavors, not safe, don't erase the serious risks that they pose, and is long been established by the FDA itself in terms of how concerning it is and the role that they play in terms of initiation and addicting youth and keeping them. And I imagine parents tonight could even say, of course, like in terms of my kid prefers, watermelon, bubblegum, whatever flavor it is. But what I wanted to talk about is in terms of for the FDA, in terms of our response, is that so we sent a letter out to parents to say, hey, if you would be willing to bring your voice to the FDA, you have a tremendous power, and we need your voice in terms of going to them to letting them know that we do not agree with this and this is wrong. So we've had several hundred parents respond, and we've gotten the attention of the FDA. They actually contacted us about this letter, and we were able to let them know in terms of our concern on this. So once that happened, we just realized like we need to keep going with this. So thank you to those of you that have already signed the letter. It's on our website, and we're going to share a link at the end of the call, and we're going to be communicating with folks in terms of encouraging more people to sign on. So thanks to those of you that have signed on. If you haven't, please join us. And we need more parents on this. Right now we're in the hundreds. We would love for this to be in the thousands. FDA has said to us in terms of just sending a form letters, not really terribly effective, but contrary to that, you're calling us, you're telling us in terms of we're getting a response from you on this. And some parents actually have also bravely shared in terms of their experience with the FDA, which we know is something that can be so personal and so painful. So that's obviously something that you can opt to do, but you don't have to. Obviously, in terms of sending a letter and getting your voice and lending your name to this is huge. And just, on that point about parents, and what Meredith shared about in terms of just the history over the years, the reason that we know what we know about the industry and their practices, that we know about the health harms, that we know about how just nefarious the industry has been, we know how they've influenced decision makers and lawmakers. The reason that we know all this is because of the courage of individuals, because people have been brave, because people have been willing to take chances, whether it's been somebody that's a surgeon general, whether it's been somebody that's spoken up at a local meeting, whether it's somebody that's gone to their school or to their police department or whomever that has said, I'm concerned about this. This isn't right. Something is just needs to be done here. This is what has made change. And so we are really want to galvanize our parents tonight and in the next coming weeks, months, probably years, in terms of how we can make sure that our voice is heard. We are at the table, but also we want people to know that you have tremendous influence, not only in your youth's lives, which we know sometimes that can feel a little bit uncertain, saying that as a parent myself, but in terms of our lawmakers and our decision makers need to hear from parents. They're hearing from the industry all the time in terms of how this is going to hurt small business, about how this is going to be a negative effect, or there's going to be a black market, or just, they hear from the industry. So we really need parents to speak up and speak out. And we're going to be giving you plenty of opportunities to do that tonight.
Well, I just want to say that the industry has really done us a favor by not even hiding in plain sight, but in such a bald-faced manner, and without shame, in buying influence, and spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to spread around for PACs and directly, or again, this is not a political statement, but there was reporting even today about the current president investing in tobacco companies. So the industry has done us a favor by exposing the hideousness of its skin. I think of the industry as like the Loch Ness monster that like rises up, with its like, just disgusting predatory face. And so this people I think are asking some of the questions like, how is this allowed? And,
Yeah.
is this legal? And I think it is incumbent upon all of us, as Caroline said, to use our voices. They have done us a favor by not even pretending to be anything other than gangsters who are making billions of dollars off the backs of our kids. And it is shameful that at this moment, the agency, the Food and Drug Administration, and its leadership, whose mission is to protect the public health of our country and certainly of our children, has been co-opted by the predatory industry. So our voices do matter. Those
Mhm.
letters do matter. But the other thing that makes this an inflection point and sort of a catalytic moment is that um, individuals make change, yes. And by the way, not every individual feels comfortable taking the same action. Just by attending tonight, you are taking an action. Even if you don't do what we would hope that you could do or will do, which is, reposting our social media on this topic or on any topic. Certainly signing that letter, inviting a friend. There was a commercial, I'm going to definitely date myself, when I was young, about, I forget the name of the shampoo, but it was like, and she told two friends, and she told two friends, and so on and so on. And you could just see how one person liked the shampoo, and then there were thousands of people who liked it. Just share what you learned tonight. If that's all you do, that's great. If you feel like doing that, but not signing a letter, just by being here tonight, you've taken an action. And as Caroline said, it is in addition to sending this letter, we hope that some of you will be willing to send letters to your attorneys general to thank them if they've signed those letters, to urge them to take action, because even if the federal government is failing to protect our kids by enforcing, the law, and by keeping these harmful flavored products away from our kids and removing them, at the state level, there can be action at the city level, at the local level. All of these things matter. Like, life is about community. And so, whether your community feels small or large, spreading the word and encouraging others to understand that we need to protect our kids together, we need to take action. It starts from the ground up. There's the grass tops and the grassroots, and both are really important. And that's why the parent voice is so urgent, because
Yeah,
again, you have an industry with endless resources, and yet
right.
you have a parent's voice that cannot be bought and cannot be silenced because of that money. It is the most effective tool in public
Yeah.
health on this issue for us, which is why
Yeah.
we need to take advantage of the remarkable resource of parents' voices, to contact local officials, to contact your schools, to talk to your school nurses and say, this is a problem, let's fight it together.
Yeah, and states aren't powerless in this situation. This is why the AGs have spoken up and spoken out, and they've sent the letter that they've sent, in terms of, because states and localities do have some power. They can exercise some controls over what is happening. We're getting some questions in terms of, how could this have happened? Like, who is this glass company? Why was this allowed? Why were their products authorized? And so these are questions for the FDA. We share those questions with you and that curiosity. And
And they have
we
still not released all of the documents that they are supposed to tell us. I mean, as my late mother would say, I'm sure she didn't come up with it herself, money talks, baloney walks. Like, this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yes, no, precisely. So what we want to do today is make sure to, share information with you, answer your questions. Please keep them coming. Please put them in the Q&A. It's incredibly helpful for us to hear from you in terms of what you need to know on this, so you can be, more and better informed. We're all about that, but also in terms of, we are just really asking of you in terms of how you can support us in terms of lending your voice as much as you can, and bringing that parent power to this issue as it's needed, whether it is in, and sometimes these can feel like really small steps, but sometimes it's a matter of just thinking, a decision maker saying, thank you for signing on to this. This is just incredibly important. Please keep going. And they do need to hear from us. I actually was telling Meredith, I spoke with somebody from one of the AG's offices today, and they said that some of the AGs are getting heat about this, that they're getting pushback from people in their states to say that, why are you focusing on this? This isn't like an issue that's really matters. This is really impacting our state. Should this be a priority right now? So we need to really let the decision makers know, like the AGs, that what they're doing is important, and we need them to keep going on this. So thank you so much for
One other
everyone.
thing is,
Yeah.
I mean, we discussed this earlier. I mean, one of the things that really, again, if the federal government is letting us down, we need to make noise. But we also, again, and we've said this for many years, we need to redouble now our efforts at the city, state, and local level. And one thing that does have that often is powerful and important because it has a trickle down, because people in your community will hear it and see it, and elected officials will hear it even louder, is writing letters to the editor. That doesn't mean necessarily writing a letter to the editor of the New York Times. We have done that and others have done that. But even the most local papers, like those letters from a parent about what's going on in your community, really matter. So if you have an interest or want guidance on or want a template about writing letters to the editor, please let us know, because we would love to see parent voices, because so many, the industry spends a lot of time and money getting third party organizations or representatives of organizations to write letters that are counter to the parent voice. I can tell them a mile away, having been a journalist. I can always tell when I read a local letter to the editor on my Google alerts, and I'm thinking, that's interesting. Why would that person from this organization? And it's almost, I mean, it's almost like a crazy parlor game. I'm like, you can look up and you see, well, wow, the industry has given so much money to this organization. That person is affiliated with that organization, or that's interesting. So letters to the editor are really important. If that's something you have interest in, we would really love
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
helpful with that as
One thing
well.
I want to sort of comment on, there's a question that came through about the illicit vapes that are on the marketplace. So the vapes that are on the market right now, this is a function of enforcement flavors. It's not necessarily a function of in terms of laws that are or aren't on the books. The industry has all the products in the market that they want on the market. So we are working against in terms of trying to bring science and reason and public health understanding as a way to sort of support families and counter all these actions in terms of when youth are addicted and going through serious addictions and all the health harms that are occurring. But the products that are on the market is because the industry wants them on the market. They're the ones that want to put them there. They're now are saying that, oh, there's consumer demand and that this is leading to local businesses and this is helping in terms of the economics of our community. However, that is really just a very weak argument, because in terms of the impacts that it has on our communities, the expenses that go with that and sort of the economics of it are much more detrimental than allowing a smoke shop and a vape shop to remain open. So just want to talk about in terms of that's these products that are here are because the industry wants them here. It's not necessarily in terms of how flavors have been regulated necessarily. It's because the industry is driving it and driving the demand and the interest for it and getting them through.
I also just want to, there seems like there's a question about, someone said, well, the quote, banning of flavored vapes has led to a massive illicit market. I just want to make it clear that our organization is not calling for, we certainly are not calling for a quote ban. We're not calling for ending the sales of all vapes. We are focused on the flavors. And why? Well, a big reason is the FDA itself has said, and the science has shown over and over, that the flavors hook the kids. FDA itself, in its own recent guidance and repeatedly over years, has said flavors are the top driver of youth initiation and use of tobacco products, in this case, of vapes. So if FDA itself is telling us that flavors are the driver of initiation and youth, we are calling for ending sales of flavors. We are not calling for a quote for a ban. We are not focused on adults. Adults hopefully will make healthy choices for themselves, but they are adults. We are talking about about teens and young people, and the sales of tobacco is 21 and under. So we are talking about protecting minors from flavored tobacco. That's a flavored nicotine and tobacco product. So that's what we're talking about. And the industry itself repeatedly says that, these groups are calling for a quote ban on everything, and that has created, all of these illicit sales. Well, the irony is that now FDA itself is saying, okay, all of these products are on the market without authorization, so technically they're illicit, but we're not going to do a thing about it. So that's why it's so important to use our voices.
Yeah, no, agree completely. So speaking of using our voices, again, we want to just mention in terms of ways that parents can join us. And so we actually have a sign up for people to let us know if you are willing and available to take some more immediate action. These actions could look like, of course, as things that we've mentioned in terms of contacting your decision maker, whether it's to thank them, whether it's to inquire with them in terms of what they're doing about this issue, whether you want to bring your concerns forward to them. It might even look like in terms of writing a letter to the editor, to your paper of record or to a national paper and the like. There's been a lot more media interest in this issue as of late because of just the really great journalism that's happened in terms of showing the industry's influence that sort
Because
of
it's
connect with that.
outrageous. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I don't, I get very passionate about this as a mom. But how is it possible that the agency that was created, the laws that were created so that that agency's purpose was to protect our kids and all of us from predatory industry, the predatory tobacco industry, is bowing to the how is it possible? It is so outrageous. And I'm sorry, it's it as a mom, when I think about the stories that we have heard from thousands of parents over these last few years, whether it is face to face or by phone or via email or via social media, DM, whatever it is, parents are suffering. Like, we're not talking about, like, oh, it's not good for the kids to get this. We're talking about parents who, in some cases, have suffered catastrophic, incidents where, we hear from parents every single day who are in pain, whose kids are in pain, who are desperate to help their kids manage nicotine addiction, manage terrible physical health and mental health harms that have cascaded since they were initiated into the use of these products. Like, that's what we have to remember. We have an industry that seeks to addict an entire generation to its new products because they killed the last generation with smoking, and now they're trying to recreate themselves as smoke free. It is outrageous and it's so painful. And I also just want to say, you know, I'm going to give you, my email. Like, there's like no greater privilege over these last few years than being able to speak to parents about my own experience or about other parents' experiences. Like, we really just, whether it's parent to parent, if all that you want is someone to talk to, like, that's what we do. And that's really important. So please feel free to reach out. You can certainly reach out to our general mailbox, info@parentsagainst.vaping.org. But you can also reach out to me personally, Meredith, Meredith, at parentsagainst.vaping.org. Like, sometimes, as I said, sometimes just joining a webinar and reaching out or not reaching out or reaching out when you're ready, like, these things really do matter because it's not theoretical. It's about real kids who are suffering and real parents who are desperate to help their kids. And now we're talking about real evidence of an industry that has used its endless resources to co-opt the federal agency, the federal government, the president, so they can continue peddling their poison. And so I think that that's why we're all here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well said. Thank you so much, Meredith. So, as we've I think made it really clear in terms of we need your voice, we need in terms of the parent concern to come forward in a really powerful way, and we're prepared to bring your voice to the tables and make sure your voice is heard and known, and we appreciate it in terms of we know so many of you are going through this experience, and it is incredibly painful and difficult. So definitely let us know how we can support you as you're navigating this. We stand by you in terms of however we can. So we have some actions, again, we would love for you to take. I think we can sort of just share on the screen here in terms of ways that you can get involved, ways that you can make your voice heard. Again, many of you have already joined us on this, and thank you so much for those that have done that. But if you want to raise your hand tonight, that will let us know and sort of indicate in terms of where we have parents that are just sort of immediately ready to take some actions. Because, like I said, we're getting a great response. We have been contacted by several outlets in terms of whether it's the media, but just other groups, whether it's been decision makers and the like, but they keep telling us in terms of how much they want to understand in terms of the parent voice on this issue as well. There is just a question that's come through about marijuana products. So just wanted to mention that we focus on vaping as related to nicotine. We are absolutely concerned around marijuana, but where our expertise and our wheelhouse is in terms of what's happened with the tobacco industry. We know that these travel together. We know that we hear so much from parents that their youth are using both products and the like. So we definitely are concerned on that. But again, where we put our efforts and where our focus is on nicotine. So making your voice heard. Thanks. You can see that people are signing up and doing that. So thank you so much. Meredith, is there any sort of in terms of words of wisdoms you want to share, especially in terms of right now, parents might be feeling, so concerned. There's so much happening
Yeah, one
in
thing
our lives.
we haven't talked about, and again to the parent or the person who asked about the the flavored cannabis vapes. I mean, for years we have known that the tobacco industry has been investing in cannabis outside of the U.S. because it's not federally legal. You remember this is about a delivery system, and what we do know from the figures is that there is a very high rate of co-use, and it's always about the flavors. So while we do not focus at the moment, on cannabis, and are other groups that do, again, it's about the delivery system and it's about the flavors. I also wanted to say there was a question that I thought was. And someone is saying, we have heard that many cannabis vapes contain nicotine in order to make them more addictive. I'm just looking at the questions because there was another thing. Uh, I think I just want to say that, and someone asked this question, and I had already written it out. I mean, just today there was a release from FDA, like a 6-page comment or guidance, and I just want to read this because you'll just get it even more intently. This is a direct quote from an FDA public document today about the glass flavored vapes. Quote, there may be some residual risk to youth stemming from uncertainty around how the device access restrictions will perform in real world settings. That's because what FDA has said is we authorize these mango and blueberry flavors because they have age gating, and then there's no information available about that. And Carolyn, you mentioned earlier, kids can, get to anything. I guess I would just want to say, this is about the flavors. This is about the failure of the federal government to fight back against the enormous influence and money of the predatory industry. And again, not every parent feels comfortable sharing their story or putting themselves out there. And that is okay because every action a parent takes, however small or however large, really does matter. And I'll just repeat it again, which is that there is no amount of money that the tobacco industry could ever spend that could drown out, silence, or take away from the authentic power of a parent's voice, of a parent's comment, of a parent's reaching out to another parent to sound the alarm about how harmful these products are. So I guess I would say for those who are willing to take actions, private or public, thank you. For those who are not, thank you for joining us. And I couldn't be prouder to be part of an organization with, leadership like Carolyn. And I mentioned, we have a small but mighty team. We started as three moms around a kitchen table. And we remain parents around kitchen tables, dining tables, who are able, because we are parents, to have access at the most local and at the highest levels. And we have to make our voices heard because we can't allow the tobacco industry to rewrite again the ending of a disaster movie that we have seen over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Meredith. So thank you so much. And thanks for being such a tireless advocate. I mean, it's like incredible. Here we
No,
are.
but think about all the advocates we work with. We have
Yes,
remarkable parents, we have remarkable public
yes,
health partners, we have so
yeah.
like that it takes a village. This is like it's a really important
Yeah.
um
No,
village
and
in
I love what you
person
said
and
about
digitally.
just even like small, if you want to even just be quiet in the background on that, you don't want to, share your story. We completely understand. There's many ways that you can be part of this and support this. So thank you so much. A couple of things I would just want to mention in closing. Well, one is thank you again so much, everyone, for attending tonight. Thank you for the actions you're already taking. Thank you for your interest in remaining curious on this. We again, we need your voice, and so we welcome hearing from you, whether it's on our webinars or just if you want to just reach out to us. Want to share that recently Meredith recorded a podcast with Dr. Jonathan Avery, who's from Cornell Medical College. He's from Cornell, right? And it was just in
The head
terms of
of addiction medicine research. He's
yes,
a
thank you.
fantastic clinician and one of our very early
Yeah.
partners. Yes.
Yeah, Dr. Avery is like incredible. So um, this is just a really great conversation you can hear between a psychiatrist who is also a parent. Dr.
An
Avery is
addiction
so
psychiatrist. Yes, he's a
yes, and he's so relatable. He talks about in terms of how he doesn't have this figured out, but sort of what he understands brings really on the best practices forward. So this podcast can really be just a tremendous resource for you if you're a parent that's just navigating this issue. So we encourage you to give it a listen on that. Um, so again, here's one last time in terms of
I'm like signing up. I keep signing up. I'm like going,
you can join us. Um, have I mentioned that we need your voice? Yeah, we definitely would again love to have you be part of this. We really appreciate again your time and your commitment, your heads and your hearts on this. We need them all, heads,
and
hearts, and
and
hands.
any and all support you feel comfortable giving. I mean, I think unlike most organizations, we do need support, but in this moment, we need your support, from your heart and your head and your mind. But we always appreciate support because we are a grassroots nonprofit, and we are always there. It is donate today, but really
Yeah,
donate your time or your voice or whatever you feel comfortable. We need all of it because together we will make a difference. I mean, can we defeat and behead the evil monster that is the tobacco industry? You know, we can certainly have an impact. We have already have an impact. We will continue to have an impact. And again, I really do believe that the voice of parents is the most effective and from the industry's perspective, the most dangerous tool we have in our, in the public health toolkit to fight back.
Yeah, and it's too important in terms of our children, their lives and their health on this. So thank you again. Thank you so much, Meredith. Thank you
Well,
again
thank
for
you.
everybody joining us this evening. We look forward to seeing you again. Again, please reach out with any questions. And we would look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Have a great
Thank you so much.
evening. Okay,
Good
take
night.
care. Bye.
Bye-bye.